Good evening, morning, afternoon, night, whenever you find it most convenient, as always, to listen to the Bonfire. I, as always, am Alan, the Pole with the goal. My goal is to not die, because right before we started this episode, I was taking a swig of water, and DJ just said, "Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. We're recording now," and I choked.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Did I just make you choke, Alan?
Actually, almost. Now we actually can't start. So thank you. As always, I am joined by my lovely jubbly co-hosts, as mentioned, DJ.
In fairness, I did not know he was drinking something. He just started drinking, and I just said that while I was looking at my other computer screen.
And Tim.
So now we've got to label this the bonfire as a choking hazard on the episode description. So thanks for that, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Drink responsibly.
Do we need to add an innuendo warning for that?
Oh boy.
Well,
now we do.
Great start to the episode, as always. Let's just get right into the news before we talk about the game, as much as there is to talk about in that game. So, Xherdan Shaqiri, he will return in time for Leagues Cup. It's essentially confirmed that he's going to be back, whether he's going to play for the tournament or play a game for the Fire is to be seen. No guarantee, essentially. But he is also retiring from the Swiss national team. He put out posts on his social media saying, yeah, he's done. It's been, I think, and he mentioned all the years and the amount of goals and everything like that, and that it's time to call it quits. So, yeah, I guess we won't see him at the next international tournament that Switzerland features in.
I'm genuinely kind of going to look into this later, I think, but I think Shaqiri is probably one of the last people from the 2010 World Cup to actually still be playing. So,
like, actively playing?
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. But so we will see when Leagues Cup comes around, whether we will, of course, see Xherdan Shaqiri in a Fire shirt or whatnot.
The last thing about that is that, in a way, it's sort of ridiculous that the Fire had 12 matches remaining. Xherdan Shaqiri played a handful of minutes in the last game that Switzerland played. He played one other match in the tournament. He had lengthy breaks in between. He was training at a high level, but he's a high level athlete. Fire had 12 matches at that point left in their season. 12 matches in the MLS regular season left in his contract. Obviously, the Leagues Cup, and if the team makes it to the postseason, which seems increasingly unlikely, would add to that. But and the team basically said, we're not going to rush Shaqiri back for a full quarter of them. Like, they were fine with him not appearing for 3 matches. Now, I mean, that just gets to the debate about whether or not, the team is better off with him or without him. But, that's just not what you want from a team from their highest paid player in history.
Yeah, it seems like this is usually something you would do maybe for, I don't want to say lesser paid player maybe. But yeah, for someone on a contract like Shaqiri and for the amount of minutes he got in the tournament, it seems a bit, just a bit of a squint side eye at that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's been clear that there's been a little bit of, from the time that he was allowed to depart early, which is basically unheard of. Like, there's been a little bit of like, we all know what's going on, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and it's just unfortunate.
Truly. All right. So the next topic isn't truly a Chicago Fire topic, but it is an MLS one that could possibly involve us. Chicho Arango, who is the Golden Boot leader, is not going to feature in the MLS All-Star game, as he's been suspended for 4 games violating MLS harassment policies, and that is including the MLS All-Star game and a Leagues Cup game. So the suspension carries into that tournament as well. Of course, the question being, is he going to be replaced? And I did see, Tim, you had a repost, or not a repost, a reply to someone asking, who do we replace with a certain Belgium guy we could also replace, or we could send in and recommend.
Yeah, I mean, Hugo Kuipers is going to be the first Fire player to reach double digits in goals, like almost certainly. I mean, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx anything, but I mean, he's been playing very well. He had a little bit of a slow start, which is what you expect from players coming into the league, and since then he's been a very active striker, and a lot more than like the scouting report I think on him that you heard from a lot of like league-wide sources is the guy is like a poacher, almost like a target center forward. We've seen him do a lot more than that. We've seen him with some good hold-up play. We've seen him with some good playmaking. We've seen him get back on defense. And I mean, is an all-star nod maybe like a tiny bit of a stretch because like there's other guys that have 9 goals that aren't under consideration? Yeah, maybe. But like legitimately, he's been playing like someone that is going to be getting all-star nods in the future in this league. So let's just get ahead of the curve here.
Defo. DJ, what do you think about that?
I think Kuipers should not be called for this All-Star game. Hopefully, well, I say hopefully in the future, but All-Star games to me are just weird. But I think this year it has to be Kai Kamara. This year, I think Kai Kamara deserves it more than he did last year, just because, hey, you basically secured yourself second place in the league for a while. Here's an All-Star game.
I think he was kind of given the all-star nod for like almost catching, like getting second, beating Landon Donovan, catching up to Wando. I kind of feel like that's like giving it to him twice. I mean, not that he doesn't necessarily deserve it, but it just seems like we kind of already did that for that reason. I mean, there's like a lot of other players I think would be worthy of all-star nods too, but Kai Kamara wouldn't be, I think, like the next one up that I would name.
I mean, to be fair, the All-Star game, the choices tend to be very stupid. I'll be perfectly honest.
I mean, hey, everyone's got their opinions. I personally think the All-Star game could be just done better. In the sense of, I'm personally not a fan of, I don't know. There's several opinions on this, whether you like MLS All-Stars versus like a Premier League or a European team, or MLS versus Liga MX All-Stars, or whether other stuff like that. I don't know. I personally don't know. Like, I just feel personally uninterested in the All-Star game. Maybe it's the lack of Fire players in recent years. Or
okay,
I have no idea.
It's for MLS Next Pro, but they're bringing back Goalie Wars this All-Star weekend.
Okay, so, now my interest have piqued. Well, if Chris Brady and goalie, can we have just like a little like all-star like skills thing just for like Fire players? Like, let's do like a Patrick Loss versus Chris Brady goalie war thing.
Or can we wait until Patrick Loss isn't 16 and 5'8"?
Nah, I think he's got it.
Is he gonna not be 5'8" in 3 years?
I believe that's the hope that everyone has.
I mean, to be fair, he's doing fine at 5'8".
This is the conversation for another time. But yeah, like right. I think
that's
limiting his. Yeah, there have been examples of goalkeepers that are not above 6 feet in history. There's not that many recent ones, and they're getting fewer and farther between.
Don't forget Air Bud.
Okay, that's
you just compared him to a dog. All right.
To a golden retriever. All right. So our last, I guess not piece of news, but a little announcement, of course, is that the transfer window is opening this Thursday, July 18th. And we will be having a special transfer episode coming out, I'm pretty sure, the day after this episode comes out, or the episodes are going to be fairly close. Tim's on it, so you'll be hearing him. So look out for that on your feed. You are someone like us who just loves transfer news.
Yeah, me and Alex Calabrese, hosted by John from frequently doing the Hot Takes pod. He, the three of us, like, kind of went over what we thought the Fire transfer needs are this window, what's likely, this sort of state of the roster. There's not a ton of inside info that like we wouldn't have shared with you via other means, but we hope it's interesting. I think it's an interesting conversation, and hopefully we'll have more news to report on the transfer front soon.
Sir, yes, sir. And yeah, I think it's time to talk about the game. The most soccer game that like this was a game of soccer essentially. And we can agree on
was
this.
it really? That seems like a generous. That's kind of a glow up.
They kicked a ball around on a field. I mean, so that's close to soccer.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the origins of soccer was a bunch of aristocratic Chinese men hitting a ball against their head. So
it's one way to put it. So yeah, Fire kept a clean sheet. So did NYCFC for the game to end 0-0 after 98 minutes plus of honestly just not much happening. Of course, goals didn't happen. There was like a few little points of interest that we're, of course, going to talk about. This is the second match in a row. Well, one of the points of interest is that this is the second match in a row where the Fire just failed to score. We're once again back at this point. It feels like that the team just isn't able to put the ball into the back of the net. I feel like we've gotten past this point, but as I mentioned in the previous episode, it just feels like we've fallen in our face. And this game was sort of picking ourselves up, kind of dusting ourselves off, but not being able to move forward from that. I mean, Brady got a clean sheet. It almost didn't happen. There was a goal literally in the last few minutes, but it was called offsides immediately. But yeah.
There was also the time where the I forget who it was. The guy literally kicked it, hit the goalpost, rolled right back out past the other goalpost.
Yeah, we had a doink that was almost a double doink. I'm trying to remember who that was. I've got it in my notes, which I should have up, but obviously I don't. That was like literally one of like two moments of genuine interest in the match. Because they're like, I think that it's fair to say like we're all like, soccer sickos enough here that like we think that like I have seen fun zero like games that end with 0 goals, like fun 0-0 draws. This was not one of those.
No, this game in general had nothing both on and off the pitch. Now, okay, I lied. 25,000 people, over 25,000 people were at Soldier Field for this game. There was a bit of rain before then. I think there was a bit of a storm warning beforehand. Very quickly cleared up before the game, so the weather was nice and warm. I think it was actually a bit hot and humid, actually. I can't remember. I just remember I wore my jeans and it was a mistake. But I made a tweet that has gotten attention of a lot more people than most of my tweets, and that was about the current state of the supporter section and how you can say what you will about the supporter section and that people can buy tickets and do what they want because they bought the ticket, that the team is not giving anything worthy enough to give their support, that you should give their support, but it's still nonetheless a supporter section. And it just and even looking back at the highlights from the TV, it doesn't look like a supporter section apart from the first few rows of 122 where Sector Latino is, and the few rows in 124 where Barn Burners, Red Line, and a lot of those groups are at. And people complain about a lot of things when it comes to the supporter section, but my complaint is basically that if you're going to be in a supporter section, you should support. And I showed a person playing Clash Royale in the middle of the game. Now, don't get me wrong. I love playing Clash Royale. It's one of my favorite games to play, but not during a soccer game in a supporter section. I remember someone reposted it and called me a weirdo about it, and our fantastic founder came to my rescue and basically said that this is not the person that you should be calling a weirdo for actually doing something in the supporters section. I always just wonder, like, watching other MLS games, whether other MLS teams have the same problem of like the supporter culture.
A number do. Now, like the Flyers is obviously kind of unique. I will, I think that you're right about this. I think that there is definitely an argument to be made that, like, if you really get the supporter section going, like, no one would want to be on their phone. And I think that gets to the discussion about like what the team is doing and stuff like that. But I ended up replying to the person after they replied to your tweet. It turns out it was the friend of a supporter.
Yes.
I think it was actually a decent conversation on the internet, which like on Twitter is an amazing feat, really. But basically, I mean, he said the guy was standing for most of the game. My take was, look, you bring someone to the supporter section, like that's great. Like that's how you get new supporters, but you should be prepared. Like you should talk to them about what to expect, right? Like you're not going to be sitting down. It's going to be loud. There's going to be people playing instruments. There's going to be people cheering. There's not going to be a lot of people sitting. So like that's the energy that people are going to be bringing. You should bring some of that, at least like carried, like be in the room, so to speak, like metaphorically. You don't have to be the loudest or anything like that, but like some people really enjoy that. And if like that's not what you want to do, then like that's cool. Like you can go sit somewhere else. I pointed out like you can take your tickets. Like they said they had season tickets in the supporters section. I believe that for all season tickets, you can kind of like take your ticket and spend the same money or more money and like move them to somewhere else in the stadium if you want. Like, because if you're bringing your, grandma or great grandma or like whatever, like supporter section, maybe not the right place. So like move to a different spot. That's a better place for the group that you're with. And then kind of like, I think being polite about it. Again, I still think it's not ideal.
No, and this isn't, and the same thing goes across the different groups. On the Chicago Fire Reddit, there was a post, the user by the name of Bagel842, who, by the looks of their post, they were where Sector Latino is, and they said that they were having the exact same problem where we were having with Barn Burners and the other groups, where we tried so much in getting the people just to at least stand and at least sort of, join in supporting, but it's difficult. And one thing they said was that it's really frustrating for people who are actively trying to make a good atmosphere for people just to not participate. Now, of course, there's going to be comments of that it's because of whether it's the culture or the specific songs and chants and like just a list that is as long as a scroll, an ancient scroll, essentially. How am I saying?
Yeah, I don't think that. So like, I don't think that that's the whole story, though, right? Like,
that's not the whole story.
Because there's fundamentally people that want to join, right? I think is the point that you're trying to make. And if you may not be the happy, like you may not be the loudest singer, you may not have the best tune, like whatever, but as long as you're sort of like bringing some of the atmosphere, like that's what's expected in the supporter section. And you not liking the chant, like, does anyone like, I mean, we've all heard the same chants at every football match across the planet over the past like 10 years. Like, get used to it, like, right? But it's about being there and being there in both like the physical sense as well as the like emotional sense, I think is what you're complaining about.
Yeah.
And I think that like,
this is, it's not hard to get involved. I mean, I used to think that the supporter section was like, I was there and I was like, okay, what's going on? But then I joined in and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. The point is that this is a thing that just needs to be looked at on all sides, including the club. The club themselves, I feel like, could help out, considering that one thing that someone replied to the post on the Reddit is that the supporters section is the cheapest seats, and that the way this team is doing, some people aren't going to spend a lot of money and some people are going to just spend the least amount, and when it makes sense for $25 plus fees. And if you get there 2 hours before the game starts, you can have front row seats. It low-key makes sense, but there's an asterisk next to it. And
Yeah,
I think that's where I'm going to stop about this, because I feel like I can go for
right. I
years
get
about
your point.
this. So
I
yeah.
mean, I think that like some of those things are deliberate choices, because some clubs you have to get supporter section tickets via a supporters group, or you can be an independent supporter and like talk to the ISA directly. The Fire decided not to do it, and like anytime you put up barriers like that, you're reducing access, and anytime you reduce access, like you will have fewer people in the supporters section,
Mhm.
including some that I think that would be willing to be good supporters. But, I think that self-policing is the best way to do it, right? And like that's like, I don't know, like I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here, because I am on record as saying that people that aren't in the supporters section really shouldn't be saying a lot about what goes on in the supporters section. But in this case, like I did reach out to the person who's like, oh yeah, that was my friend, and like, look, like you need to prepare your friend if you're going to be in the supporters section about what the game is about, and like if you see
Mhm.
your friend, like that's the other thing about this, like I believe that we see that guy in the video. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but like he's also sitting down and not like cheering and supporting. So like that's kind of the problem there, right?
I
Um,
mean, you also can't expect kids that are in elementary school and parents that are supervising over them to be as active, I guess, in the supporter culture as, people my age or a bit older. Um, that's why some people have nicknamed 123, or like the section between SL and S8 groups, the picnic section, because it's where families go to have their little picnic and possibly get close to players that come close to get signatures or whatever. So yeah, that was sort of my low light of the game. Apart from what was going on the field, there really wasn't much to that was memorable. Though, I mean, DJ and Tim, you guys can find a highlight to sort of take us out of this deep conversation we were talking about.
I like the
think
color blue.
I thank you. I did.
NYCFC's color, you mean?
Exactly. I mean, it's a nice shade of blue.
So
I want to
It's
go on
nice
record by stating that both Alan and Tim just took a shot.
oh well, mine was water, but okay.
Mine also was water. So
Let me smell the canisters, boys.
All right, here you go.
when they invent smell-o-vision. All right.
So, well, one actually on that note, really quickly, for a little bit in the second half, we were staying kind of like in the lounge area because it was very hot, and I was with my mom, and she's like, I don't want to go back out to the seats yet. So we were watching the TV on the monitors, and both the Fire game as well as the Canada Uruguay third place match were on at the same time, and my mom was like, wait, I can't tell which is which, because it was two teams, one wearing red and one wearing light blue.
That's
like, Mom,
funny.
like legitimately, you should be able to tell the difference between these four teams. But I thought that Gaston Jimenez had a pretty solid match overall. I think that it wasn't perfect. I think that there's an issue of effort, maybe, and like that's one of the concerns about him. I thought that Hugo Kuipers was far and away better than really anyone could have expected for a striker that really didn't get any service whatsoever. And I think those are both highlights. Like Kuipers was active in the midfield. He was like setting up like he was playing quick balls to other people to try to like get the attack jump started. He was like carrying the ball forward into space and stuff, like doing all these things that like are not like, frankly, if the Fire were scoring 5 goals a game, he wouldn't be doing, because he would be busy doing the things that he's supposed to be doing. But it's awesome seeing that effort from him. But that kind of gets me to my low light. I thought this was one of Brian Gutierrez's weakest games since Shaqiri has left. I thought that he also had a ho-hum performance last week, and it's kind of a troubling sign, because like you would think with Shaqiri returning, this is the time to make the case of like, look, like he can be on the squad, but he doesn't belong on the pitch, because like this is my job. Like this is something I am going to be doing, and I do it better than anyone else. So I am the attacking midfielder that you want out there. And he really hasn't been doing it. And it's just been disappointing to me.
Yeah. I feel like from the attacking standpoint, this team digressed a bit since the San Jose game. And that includes Brian Gutierrez. And our favorite off the bench player to come forward, Tom Barlow, I still haven't really seen much to really see why he's here, honestly. He always comes off the bench, gets and in the like last like usually like 10-15 minutes, and I see from it.
I feel like Barlow is the guy that you kind of have to bring on, just because he's a body, and if someone's tired, you need to bring on a body. But in all honesty, he should be 4th on the depth chart instead of arguably 2nd.
That's true, because usually he comes on before Koutsias, or like even at the same time, or yeah, just ahead of him. Yeah, so.
And that gets to my issue with the roster build. Like I've harped on this enough, but the team talked about the value they thought that he provided, and they were getting him for a steal for $250K in guaranteed GAM plus his salary, which is $200K a year. So like that's like, I think that the $250K in GAM is spread over 2 years, but that's still a $375K cap hit. And Victor Becerra, even though he's been loaned out, his salary is still on the Flyers cap. He is still taking up a roster spot because the loan didn't cover his full salary, or I don't know if it covered any of it, which is academic at this point. The point is it still hits the Flyers cap. And I don't see anything he's provided so far that Victor Becerra couldn't have provided for a significantly smaller salary cap hit, while also giving a young player the ability to develop on an MLS pitch and not a lower division pitch, and be with a first team with a lot of, skilled players and stuff, like all of those things. And so it just goes to show, I guess, one of the problems with the roster build.
I think it's also worth noting Becerra does not count against salary cap. I don't think, because he's a supplemental, if I remember correctly, at least.
You're right. So that he counts as the supplemental roster spot. So like he still occupies that spot. And so the Fire didn't get roster spot relief when they loaned him out, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
MLS roster rules. Always
Tom Barlow
find
does,
a
though.
way to confuse me.
He's a senior member. He's on the senior roster. He counts.
I'm excited to see what just comes from Victor Becerra, as well as the other forwards.
Misael Rodriguez.
Yes, Misael Rodriguez, as well as the other forwards for Fire 2 that have been doing fairly well. I mean, we mentioned that there is, of course, a difference in levels between MLS Next Pro and MLS as in and of itself, but we'll see. I feel like it is a good time to move on to the next topic, which is the preview of the next game that is happening very soon, this Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern, so 7:30 Central.
Nope, other way around.
6:30
Central,
7:30 Eastern.
Alan just
welcome to my world.
Alan just reversed the Earth's rotation like Superman.
Like Superman. We were talking about Superman when Tim was having technical issues, we were talking about the Injustice video game, and we were talking about Superman and Batman. So nice callback. So
I could take both of them on in a fight.
Possibly. Sorry, go ahead, DJ. Sorry.
I could take both of them on in a fight with prep time, and also one nuke made of Kryptonian.
I mean, you can take anyone on in a fight. That doesn't mean you can win.
It isn't anything about. Can you take this man on in a fight for $1 billion? I can. Didn't say anything about winning. I'll be the richest man going to the ER.
More like the richest man going to the morgue, but I digress. Yeah. All right. So the Fire are taking on Cincinnati, who are leading the Supporters Shield in terms of points and just on all fronts. They have 15 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses for 48 points on the season. They have a plus 14 goal differential. They've just been, wow, first of all. Their previous game, though, was a loss at TQL against Charlotte a few days ago. And the previous meeting between the two teams, of course, was the Fire's home opener at Soldier Field all the way back in March, where we saw, Cincinnati unfortunately took that game away. So, yeah. How are we feeling about this?
Do we want honesty or do we want to be optimistic?
You're literally allowed to say whatever you want. So
you are. That is true. You are.
Well, I want to get the feel of the room. I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys want me to be optimistic about this? Be the optimistic part, or do you want me to be the realistic part?
Well, normally Matt was the optimistic one of the podcast, but Matt hasn't been here for a bit, so
can I make a statement?
You please, yes, make your statement, Tim.
My thought on this is, DJ, you fortunately did not have to spend 2+ the time getting there and back hours of your life. You were not one of the 25,000 people that wasted realistically 3 to 5 minimum hours of human existence on this planet watching that match against NYCFC. Although I assume you did watch it on, on TV. So you wasted time, but you could have also been doing things like getting up and getting a sandwich or whatever. Fighting gators. Well, I don't know what you do down there. Wrestling gators.
We don't do wrestle like them gator, boy.
Yeah. Cooking gator meat on the radiator of an old F-150 that barely runs. So yeah, it at this point, after that display, second match in a row where the Fire don't score, including one against the worst team in the league by points, I feel like the Fire are kind of now at show me territory, so I think it's okay to be a little skeptical of things.
Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to lose by probably about 3-1.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm shocked, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the Fire faithful community are going to possibly agree that this is going to be a match where Cincinnati is going to dominate on all fronts. I don't know how fast the Fire are going to pick themselves up since the last 2 games, essentially. It seems like it's another slow start and this perpetuating cycle. So I have no idea, to be completely honest. Well, I mean,
this feels also like a very good match for rotation to give guys a rest before the Miami game, because the Miami game is going to be the last one before Leagues Cup. And arguably that one's actually going to be easier to win than the Cincinnati game.
Interesting.
Yeah, here's, I guess, the reason for optimism, if you want to try to find one.
Thank you.
The Fire have played well against FC Cincinnati. I mean, before FC Cincinnati were good and since they've been good. The Fire lost the previous match, but it was a close run affair, right? They weren't run out of the building in that game. It was a winnable game for the Fire until the last minute. Or at least a drawable game for the Fire until the last minute. There was that 3-3 run and gun shootout at Soldier Field last year that was a lot of fun, and that's when the team went on to win the Supporters Shield. I think the other match, the one in Cincinnati, was a 1-0 loss for the Fire. Like, so the Fire they've played like closely matched teams. FC Cincinnati right now are incredibly short on center back. Like, Miles Robinson is suspended. He was supposed to be this was supposed to be his last match before leaving for the Olympic team. The only other center backs, because Matt Miazga is the kind of like most famous center back on the team, one of the best ones in the league. He's had a season-ending injury. He was not available. I believe the only other center backs the team has are Ian Murphy, Nick Hagland, and Alvis Powell. And we're like, I mean, it is a drop off there, right? So
MLS roster rules.
Exactly. And so you're dealing with a team with like a very restricted back line. And FC Cincinnati also plays Wednesday and Sunday. And so like there's a need for rotation. And Miles Robinson won't be available on Saturday either way. So that won't really affect the rotation calculations. Like, it's possible we could be seeing a B team, and like with the Fire have talent in the roster. I think that one of the ways that you kind of show you call a team's bluff is if they start rotating more than you do, you punish them for it, right? And I think the Fire can't afford, like, they need to try to win on Wednesday, and then if they do, worry about Saturday, and not think about Saturday and then go back and say, okay, well, here's who we're going to play Wednesday.
Round of applause for Tim for providing some optimism. Some really good notes as well. That does make sense. And especially if players like Guti can get back on their feet after the who did we just play? NYC game. That's how it just feels right now. And as well as like the San Jose game where they just couldn't get anything across. It's entirely possible to flip the switch. I mean, this is MLS. I feel like this is an incredible flip the switch kind of league where the improbable happens, or even the impossible. Usually if it's not for the Fire, but it's still possible, I guess. That's what I want to say.
Yeah. Now the downside, I think that we don't know the status of Wyatt Omsberg. The Sheriff left the match in NYCFC with what looked like some kind of a leg-related injury. I don't think I can get more specific than that. I didn't see it. He was stretching his legs out, and he was down on the ground trying to stretch out before he was taken off in the second half. So Fire also potentially short on center backs. Obviously, Salquist may be available, so like that's maybe like a like for like. Fabian Herber is no longer suspended, so that helps. And I thought Pineda had a decent spell in relief when he came on for Omsberg. So like not hurting nearly as much as FC Cincinnati in terms of the center back department.
Truly. And I guess it will. I don't want to say even out the playing field, because of course one team is in sole possession in P1 of the supporters shield and the conference, while the other team, want to say it because everyone knows the story. Everyone knows it. Weather's been nice.
Yeah.
That's just how it feels right now. I say that as we're having several thunderstorms and weather watch warnings and whatnot. So that's just how it feels right now. I apologize to ladies and germs listening for I'm probably sharing, honestly, our sense of optimism towards this game and the one after that. DJ said a 3-1 loss. I mean, Tim, what do you think in terms of score prediction?
Yeah, that's kind of what my head says, but there's another like small voice in me that is like, if there's going to be a trap game involving the Fire this season, like this seems like it. For whatever reason, Fire have always played well against FC Cincinnati. It's a short flight. you lose an hour. I think the Fire have played better when they play early. I don't know why, but Chris Brady has talked about that. He likes just getting up and getting to the game. He doesn't like wasting time on match days, which I fully understand. That you want to get up and get to work. So who knows? Like I think there's a higher than normal chance that the Fire could pull a surprising win out of this one, but because Cincinnati just lost, I don't know, they don't seem like a team that is going to win, that is going to lose 2 in a row often this year.
Yeah, I feel the same, honestly, that the Fire could pull an Uno reverse card, but against the team that is Cincinnati, that have themselves pulled an Uno reverse card since coming to MLS and winning the wooden spoon several times to being one of the best teams in the league. It's going to be interesting to say the least. Hopefully, just a better game than both San Jose and NYFC in terms of on-field, just things. First of all, things happening, unlike NYCFC, and then just at least some sort of attacking prowess and goals being scored, unlike San Jose. So I don't know. I feel like it could be another 2-1 loss, though. Yeah, I don't know.
You know what just occurred to me that I should have remembered?
What has just occurred to you, boss?
Nick Hagelin is still out with a leg injury.
Yeah.
So that means for a team that has been very committed to playing a sort of a setup close to what the Fire have been doing, where it's sort of like a 5 or 3, 3 center backs and then wing backs around that on the back line. They got 2. Legitimately, they have 2 they can play. Ian Murphy and Alvis Powell. They could do a short-term call-up from FC Cincinnati 2, who don't really play the same style, and how much of a drop-off is that? I don't know. So maybe they don't play this system that has gotten them all of the points they've gotten basically in their years in MLS, because they did not get any until Pat Noonan implemented this system. I don't know, man. It's going to be rough.
Holy cannoli, man. This changes everything. I mean, I don't want to say that, but I still feel like that maybe the cycle, as it always continues, that as the last 2 games have been the Fire falling on their face and sort of slowly picking themselves up, they'll make a step forward in scoring a goal, but still won't be able to do too much against Cincinnati. I still think it'll be 2-1 against us, unfortunately.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's look, the team in 14th place, playing the team in first place, that's not, you don't expect to get 3 points from that in any league in the universe, right?
True.
But like I said, it just, something about it just seems like I still think the Fire are not going to win. But I think that the odds are a little bit higher that the Fire will win than probably what the betting odds or something like that would suggest.
Yeah, and that is in general going to be a much closer game, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And that says something about this league, right? Which is even more frustrating for the Fire, is that there's all these games where they had the talent and the ability and everything. It just is they didn't win. And but maybe this is a one that they do win.
Even though we don't think that. So yeah. Well, in general, this has been this has been an episode that can also be used to just sum up the how we feel and how the Fire are doing right now as what? WHAT question mark. What? The silence proceeding by my fellow co-hosts. Also,
I'm trying to think of something funny. I'm drawing a blank on something funny to say.
I feel like it's nothing's helping right now.
Wait, what was it that you said?
Or that both this episode and the Fire season is just what? Yeah.
Did you say WWJTD?
What's going on right now?
I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Tim currently is frozen, solid.
Oh, yeah, and Tim's gone. So, ladies and gentlemen, and they them of the fire, I think we've reached the most scuffed episode of the Bonfire yet.
For reference, we wanted this episode to be about. We figured this episode was going to be half an hour, and it's running on like 45 minutes now.
To be fair, a lot of that was taken up by rants.
Exactly.
Of a lot of things, so I feel like we can cut this episode here since Tim has frozen on our screens and disappeared. He was having internet issues, so perfectly sums up the fire. So, ladies and gentlemen, and they thems of the fire, thank you for listening to, like I said, probably the most scuffed episode ever of the Bonfire. I, as always, have been Alan the Pole with the Goal, joined by DJ and Tim, who has just disappeared from the call. And he's typing. He's saying, "Sorry, guys." Frowny face. Yep, that's how it feels. Until it until it gets. Oh, Tim's back. You want to say?
He's back.
Is he back? This. Oh.
I don't know. Alan, cut the episode now before something else happens.
All right, before something. Yeah, okay,
Bye.
he's gone. Before something else happens, come on, you men in red.